Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and this review will either be pleasurable or painful, and I can't decide because I don't know what the end of the review is going to look like yet, but we're going to be covering the faction pack for the Hedonites of Slaanesh. All of this video was recorded while I was also streaming on Twitch, so there's all the Twitch chat. And I want to thank everyone on the Honest Wargamer Patreon for helping support the show so that we can do this. We will be going through all of the rules and all of the war scrolls, but we won't be talking about the points or how to be building army lists for this army yet. Those will be in separate videos. Right now, I'm just going to be giving you a guide and insight into what I think the unit's abilities look like and how they're going to work. And then hopefully that will give us some good context, which we'll be able to change based on how many points these units are. And that will be the next video we do. So tune into that video as well. Let's get straight into it and let's start looking at the battle traits for the Hedonites of Slaanesh. So the battle traits or battle traits are the special rules that your army has, which kind of indicate how your army is going to play. And for Slaanesh, you have this pretty interesting battle trait, which has caused a roar online. Slaanesh players generally quite upset about it because they think it's quite strong for their opponent. But in the faction preview that I did, I was a little bit more confident on it. So we'll see how this ends up working, especially, when we get into the later videos. But for this video, let's start talking about what the battle traits are. At the start of a battle round, you can use the Excess of Depravity ability. What you do is you pick up to 3 different friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh units to be the targets. Those targets have the euphoric keyword for the rest of the battle round, which is quite interesting. In addition, for each friendly unit you pick, give your opponent 1 temptation dice. Your opponent can use 1 temptation dice to replace a wound roll, 1 save roll, 1 ward roll, or 1 run roll for a unit in their army with a 6. Or they can use 2 temptation dice, which I think is the thing that's got a lot of people triggered, to replace 2 of the charge rolls for a unit in their army. So basically, if you want to use your battle trait, which is like, this overlapping set of bonuses for your army, you're giving your opponent a auto 12-inch charge. And I think a lot of people are quite bothered by that. Okay? Each time your opponent uses temptation dice, it must roll on it. On a 1 to 2, inflict D3 mortal damage on a unit for which the roll was replaced immediately after the ability is used by that unit has been resolved. At the end of the battle round, you get rid of all your temptation dice. Okay, so if I decide to make a unit euphoric, what do I get? So up to 3 units could be euphoric, and those units' weapons have crit 2 hits, which could be really interesting, so we need to keep reminding ourselves of that as we review the war scrolls, and that unit can run and still shoot and or charge. Now that's going to get really spicy, as obviously you've got big fighty units like Shalaxi, Keeper of Secrets, so run, shoot, and charge. Run, shoot, and charge. So you might be able to get some very fast units. The problem is your opponent is going to be able to have a lot of countercharge ability. So we'll see how this pans out, but that's what you got so far. So with your army, you also get a free terrain feature, the Fane of Slaanesh, which has got 10 health and a 4-up save. Faction terrain in Age of Sigmar 4 can be destroyed, so you are maybe going to want to protect it. Some of the faction terrain, like the Gloomspite Gitz piece of terrain, which can bring back dead units, is obviously something you want to protect. The Fane of Slaanesh, not necessarily certain you want to protect it. 10 health, 4-up save, 6-up ward, so kind of survivable. What does it do? In your hero phase, you can pick a friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh unit wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature to be the target. You allocate D3 damage points to the target. Ward rolls cannot be made. Then you pick one of the following effects to apply until the start of your next turn. +1 to wound rolls for the target's combat attacks, +1 to run or charge rolls, and +1 to casting rolls and unbinding rolls. So this is going to be quite interesting because if it's a +1 to wound that you want, that's going to be a unit that gets +1 to wound, then runs off, does all of its damage. It's never going to get that buff again. So it really is useful for units that are going to play like more of a missile roll or like a cavalry attack roll. If the +1 to casting is really good, if we end up with a bunch of casters that have, some really impressive spell casting, and then because they're going to sit at the back of the board constantly near the Fane, and therefore be continuously getting that Fane of Slaanesh, that could be really spicy. So we'll have to see as we go through the war scrolls, but any of those are useful, but they're not as necessary as a Loon Shrine where you're bringing back dead models. So you can keep these, you don't have to worry too much about protecting it. Next up, we're going to talk about the battle formations. Battle formations are one of the a special rule that you'll pick when you write your army list. Your army list will be composed of spell laws and other things, but you'll also choose a battle formation. There are 4 to choose from: Depraved Carnival, Seeker Cavalcade, Epicurean Revelers, and Supreme Cyberites. And they all benefit certain different units. The first one is the Depraved Carnival, and the passive is the Ecstatic Throngs. The effect is you add +1 to hit rolls for friendly Sybarite infantry. Sybarite infantry are keywords that you'll locate at the bottom of war scrolls while they are damaged, or if they had any models slain in the same turn. This is pretty bad because you are required to take damage to get a bonus, and that bonus is a measly +1 to hit. If there's +1 to wound, I'd be more interested, but there is a way to get +1 to hit wound with the Fane, so I guess this is another way to get +1 to hit. Okay, next up is Seeker Cavalcade, and you get the special ability Reckless Haste. This one feels pretty good. Friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh cavalry units can use a retreat ability and still use charge abilities later in the same turn. So that's retreat and charge. In addition, no mortal damage is inflicted on the Hedonites of Slaanesh cavalry units by retreat abilities. This is the first time in the Slaanesh book that we've actually seen some sort of bonus to your army where you're also not getting a negative, a double bonus. So this is reckless, is what this is, and this feels like this is really good, especially as I'm almost certain Slickblade Seekers are going to be stonks. Next one is Epicurean Revelers, and the passive is the Exquisite Palate. Each time a friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh demon, not mortals, uses the rally command, you can make 3 additional rally rolls of a d6. Rally requires models to be dead, and therefore you can just do a little bit extra rally, which is kind of fine, but not that big a deal. And then the next one is Supreme Cyberites, which is a passive, and the passive ability is Godly Ambitions. We add 3 to the control scores of friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh units while they're within the combat ranges of only friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh heroes. That feels pretty good. We've already seen with the OCR Bone Reapers the attempt to mess around with the control score of different units. So I think that this is going to be a nice bonus for controlling stuff. So I would say Godly Ambitions feels like the right one if you are generally looking to just have some bonus for scoring objectives, and then Reckless Haste if you're planning on running a bunch of cavalry. On your army roster, one of your heroes is also going to be able to take a heroic trait, and you need to note that down. There are 3 to choose from. The first one is Glory Hog, which is a passive, where if an enemy hero is destroyed by this unit has the euphoric keyword. Don't forget, that's going to give us run, shoot, and charge. Also going to give us exploding 6s, or crit 2 hits, to be specific, which sounds a lot like this. This unit has the euphoric keyword for the rest of the battle, so that's what it's going to get. I quite like that because, you know, you've got some really good melee monsters in here, especially the Keeper of Secrets. So I like the idea that you're going to be able to gain euphoric killer forever. That's nice. Next one, Strongest Alone, also feels like it's going to go on a monstrous hero because it's add 1 to hit and wound roll to this unit's attacks when it's more than 6 inches from all friendly units. Probably want to do that to the best fighting unit that you've got. It's probably a keeper. And then finally, the passive Into the Fray is if this unit charges turn and the unmodified charge roll was an 8, this unit has strike first for the rest of the turn, which is also nice and also on something you want to make very valuable. So I think all of these feel like they're geared towards a monstrous melee character versus like a foot character or a caster. Also on your army list, you need to know which one of your heroes has a Artifact of Power, the Coveted Treasures. There are 3 to choose from. The first one is the Icon of Infinite Excess, which you use once per battle in any combat phase, but it's only once per battle. You pick a non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh unit wholly within 12 inches, and you can add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. This is obviously really nice if you've also made them euphoric, so you get +1 attack, which means you've got extra opportunity to do more crit 2 hits, which is pretty spicy. So that one feels good, although it really requires you to get the timing right on when you're going to activate this big combo. The other one is once per battle, and again in any combat phase, and it's called the Threnody Voice Box. And for the rest of the turn, you subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by enemy units while they're in combat with this unit. So if you do take a unit of Twinsouls, they've also got the ability to reduce the combat attacks characteristic of an enemy unit. And not that I really want to touch on it too much because I'd like this video to be fairly evergreen until the battle tomes come out. If you are playing in the 24 to 25 season General's Handbook, or General's Hand deck as I like to call it, that's also got an ability to reduce the attacks characteristic of enemy units using the Honor Guard mechanic. So that could be up to -3 to the attacks characteristic of a unit that you're fighting, which basically neuters all of their output, which is pretty good. But the final one is the Pendant of Slaanesh, which you use at the end of any turn, which is the end of every turn. And if any damage points were allocated to this unit this turn, you can heal 3 to this unit. And seeing as it feels like it already wants me to take a big model, I want to heal 3 to that model at the end of every turn. You do have to be alive to be able to use that, but you have to be alive to use most of these abilities. That feels like the best one to me, and probably the one I would put on a big Keeper of Secrets. In your army list, you'll be able to choose a spell lore. You only have access to one spell lore when you're playing as Hedonites of Slaanesh, and that is the Law of Extravagance. You've got 3 spells that you can cast. One of those spells is unlimited, that's Sadistic Spite. That means every wizard in your army is able to cast a spell. One wizard is not able to cast it multiple times. That's what unlimited means. And Sadistic Spite is cast on 6, and you pick a friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh unit that's got the Euphoric keyword, which you've chosen from the battle trait, or we've been able to gain some other way. And then that, instead of having crit 2 hits, it has crit mortals. So any 6 to hit is going to generate mortal damage. And that's actually really great. This is kind of the reason that you want to have that euphoric keyword, because now you're just spamming a ton of mortals. This is going to be really good when you cast it. That's going to be the problem. So you're going to try and have multiple attempts to cast it. And if you fail to cast it, that's going to be a real problem, especially if that's the way that this army really spikes up damage. Next one is Overwhelming Acquiescence, which is cast on 7. You pick an enemy unit that's visible to you within 18 inches. You add 1 to wound rolls for attacks that target the enemy unit until the start of your next turn, which is quite a long time. Especially if you've brought loads of shooting, you're obviously going to get +1 to wound, but obviously melee units that go in as well. Bang, super easy. The next one, Phantasmagoria, is cast on a 5, and this is a little complex. You pick an enemy unit that's visible within 12 inches. Until the start of your next turn, each time the target or the enemy unit is picked to use a fight ability, before reactions are used, you can pick a friendly unit in combat with the target. So let me just stop you right there. What would normally happen is I declare a fight ability. I declare. And then you would say, I react, and do a reaction. And then you would do the effect of the fight ability. However, now we have, thanks to this spell, a step between the declaration and the reaction. You could call this a sub-step. Some even call this a sub-phase. I don't know. But that's what's happening. That's where we are in the timing sequence. At that point, that friendly unit can move 2d3 inches. So what does this mean in effect? What it means is the enemy unit, it says, I'm going to fight this unit. Let's pick a Keeper of Secrets, right? Then you go, let me stop you there. I'm now going to move 2d3. If you move 4 inches away, 5 inches away, you're basically going to be able to move outside of their combat range. And therefore, they've assigned all of their attacks, but you've just shimmied your way out of dodge, which I think is quite interesting. Yeah. Or as the chat pointed out, it's effectively a 4+, you can't hit me. That's how it would work. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units and can end its moving combat. So you could even bunny hop between 2 different separate combats. Imagine casting this spell on a unit, charging in onto the very edge of a unit, rolling a big 6 and ending in combat with another unit. Very interesting. This is going to be complex, I think, on the tabletop. And the first time you explain it to a non-Slaanesh player, their eyes are going to glaze over and their brain might melt out of their ears. But that's very Slaanesh. That's pretty cool. Either way, you've got a nice set of spell laws. +1 to wound against an enemy unit, get out of dodge, and create crit mortals in your army. All feel excellent. On your army list, you'll also be able to choose a manifestation law. There are loads of generic manifestation laws that you can choose from, and also an incarnate, which is terrible for everybody. However, you do, as a Slaanesh player, have the choice and the option to choose your manifestation law, the manifestations of depravity. So these are your 3 unique manifestations / endless spells, as you may have known them. Endless spells cost 0 points, or manifestations cost 0 points. So you're effectively bringing these for free to the game, and all you need is wizards to cast the spells. They're all 2 of them are cast on a 6, so the mirror is cast on a 6, and you set up within 12 inches of the caster and visible to them. The Wheels of Excruciation and the Dreadful Visage are both, one's cast on a 6, the other's cast on a 7, but they're both set up within 12 inches of the caster, more than 9 inches from enemy units. So that's all this page is saying, because a wizard casts a spell, and then it summons effectively a unit to the board. Imagine summoning a unit. And now we're going to go look at those units. The first spell that we're going to look at, or the first manifestation, is the Mesmerising Mirror with 6 health and a 5-up save. And I think it's worth saying, if this is the first video you've watched about an Age of Sigmar 4 army, is that manifestations are killable, as is faction terrain in Age of Sigmar 4. So it's got a health value, 6 health. If you do 6 damage to it, it is going to die. But the opponent can recast it for everyone that's not on the board. It's got a 5-up save, and you can also banish it as well, and it's banished on a 7. It's got a 6-up ward as well. Now, you set this up within 12 inches of the caster, and it's going to affect units in your opponent's turn, or any movement phase in your opponent's turn. The first one we're going to talk about is a reaction to your opponent declaring a move ability, so just doing a move in their turn, for a unit wholly within 12 inches of this manifestation. Also, we'll work on redeploy, which is quite fun. Effect is that if that enemy unit does not move closer to the manifestation than it was at the start of the move, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the move after the move has been resolved. And the other ability it has is in any movement phase, which means every movement phase, you pick an enemy unit within 6 inches of this manifestation, you inflict D3 mortal damage on that target, then you add 1 to the hit rolls of the target's attacks the rest of the turn. Now, if you're picking an enemy hero like a caster, +1 to hit isn't going to be a big deal. But if you're hitting your enemy's elite unit and giving them +1 to hit for free, then that's a tough situation. Ultimately, this feels like it's going to be quite hard to utilize and use. Most you're doing here is 2d3 damage. There's an OCR Bone Reapers one which reduces ward saves by 1 for units in range, so it doesn't have that level of power. But in the right situation, it might work. Let's go look at the others. The next spell that we're going to look at is the Wheels of Excruciation. It moves 8 inches and has got 8 health and 5-up save. And this is the spell that you set up wholly within 12 inches of the caster, 9 inches away from the enemy units. What does it do? Well, it has 2d6 attacks, which are 4s and 4s. So that's not really what it's about. What it really does is in your movement phase, you can move this spell, and it's got the Exquisite Agony ability, where you pick 3 enemy units that this manifestation passed across this turn. You roll 6 dice for each target, and for each roll that is less than the target save characteristic, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So that's not bad in certain situations. Obviously, if they've got a low armor save, then doing mortal damage is not as important as if they had a high armor save, but we'll take damage where we can get it. And some units like wizards or like little heroes might not have a particularly good armor save. So this thing moving across them and then doing up to 6 mortal damage is really nice. The fact that it's 3 units, you could get really spicy with this. It's only got move 8 though, so it's not going to be running all over the place, but I quite like this one. The last manifestation we're looking at is the Dreadful Visage, which has got 6 health, moves 8 inches, got a 6-up save, obviously a 6-up ward. It's got 8 attacks in combat, which is 3s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1, so it could legitimately do a little bit of damage. But the Flensing Tongues, which you can do in any combat phase, which, say it with me, every combat phase, lets you pick an enemy unit in combat with this manifestation to be the target. Roll 6 dice, and for each 4+, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. If any models are slain by this ability, that target has strike last. So that means you're going to be able to knock down the activation order of some units that this unit is involved with. And what I like about that is when you get into combat, you alternate who strikes when. All the strike first units strike first, then all of the normal activation, and then the strike last units strike. But what you might be able to do is kind of trick the game around so that you make a unit get into the strike last bracket, and then it gets very confusing for your opponent to work out where it should try to hit first. Obviously, the Dreadful Visage is fairly easy to kill with only 6 health, but it's still pretty fun and spicy, and also it's free. You do combat abilities first. You're right. You do combat abilities first. So that does mean you could also make a strike first unit move into a strike at the normal step. So you can make strike first, go into normal step, and normal step go into strike last, which is spicy as hell in my opinion. So you're probably going to see this a load. The first war scroll we're going to look at is the big man himself. Glutos Orscollion is a giant character. He's got 18 health, a 4-up save, a 5-up ward save. Why it's not next to the armor save, I don't know. Control value of 5 for controlled objectives and moves 8 inches. Is also, incredibly, a level 2 caster, a war machine, and is also a war master and unique. So you can only have one of these guys. He's a hero, so he's going to lead your regiment. And if he's the only war master you have in your army, it will be your general. Super simple. So 2-cast wizard is really nice, especially compared to a Lord Change. Because in conjunction to being a 2-cast wizard, he's also a pretty good combat machine and also a force multiplier for your Cyberite and Mortal armies. So let's talk about that. Number one, he has, for no reason at all, a shoot into combat, flat 6 damage shot. It's only one of them, but it hits on a 2 and it wounds on a 2. It doesn't have any rend, but it does flat 6 damage, and it's a 12-inch range, which is pretty crazy. In combat, he's got Great Blade and Claws, which is 8 attacks, and goes down to 6 attacks if he's damaged, which is 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 3. If you get crit 2 hits, making them euphoric, this feels like this will go up in effectiveness as well. Or if you make this crit mortal, so it's a ton of mortals, you can do pretty well there. But it's still like potentially 24 damage, and then the Scourging Dagger is just some other silly attack. Big news on survivability. Big news, as well as that 4-up armor save and that 5-up ward save, at the end of any turn, which means the end of every turn, you can use Gorge on Excess, where you pick a friendly Cyberite unit. That's a keyword you'll find at the bottom of units. Holding within 12 inches of this unit to be the target, you can heal 6, which means you can remove up to 6 damage tokens assigned to that unit. It does not mean you can return models to a unit. It does not mean you can... That's just what it means. However, I don't know if you know this, but Glutos Orscollion is also a Cyberite unit. So what we're really saying is Glutos can heal 6 at the end of every turn. At the end of any turn. Every turn, any turn. Okay. Which I really love. He's also got his own spell as a level 2 wizard, as well as being able to cast those manifestations. And the spell lore that we saw, he's got Crippling Famishment, which is amazing. It's cast on a 7, and you pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. Then, if you cast the spell until the start of your next turn, which is a long time, halve the target's move characteristic, which is amazing, right? And then halve the run rolls and charge rolls for the target as well. That is crippling, absolutely crippling to this army. It means like it's just very, very rough. Even if you end up 3 inches away from your opponent, you're still going to fail a lot of charges. And this is just very, very strong. It's a great spell to have anywhere in this. So he's also a support piece, and a debuff piece. Okay, and then finally, the Grand Gourmand is a passive that he has. And what this is any Cyberite units that are wholly within 12 inches get the bonus based on the battle round, and also any bonuses from previous battle rounds. So if you're wholly within 12 inches of Glutos on battle round 4, you get the bonuses from battle round 4 and also units from previous battle rounds. So what are those bonuses? Well, in battle round 1, you add 1 to run rolls and charge rolls for those units. Fine. Battle round 2, you add 3 to the control scores, and now we already know we've got another way to add +3 to control scores. So now we're adding +6 to control scores. That's quite a lot to add to control scores. Battle round 3, you add 1 to hit rolls for those units' attacks, which is fine. And then battle round 4, add 1 to the rend characters for those units' melee weapons as well. Although hopefully those melee units we've already given crit 2 hits, and we use our spell to give them the crit mortals. I've said this before and I'll say it again, it really feels like they're making a centerpiece edition, where if you're going to run Glutos, you're going to run an all-mortal force, and he brings a bunch of bonuses to mortals. However, if you're just using on his own, he heals 6, like, every turn. He does a ton of damage. He's a 2-cast wizard with an amazing debuff spell. Like, if I wasn't terrified of painting him, I would pick this guy up. Also, little funny point being brought up by the Infinite DM in the chat, thank you, is imagine saying to your opponent, okay, I'm making 2 units euphoric. They're like, I'm going to be able to charge 12 inches. You'd be like, no problem. Now I'm going to half that distance. Perfect excess there. Perfect excess. Next up, we're going to talk about one of the melee characters in this. Sigvald, the Prince of Slaanesh, has got 7 health, a 3-up armor save, and a 4-up ward save. And before we talk about anything else, specifically let's focus on the fact that he's got the Cyberite keyword. So if you did run this guy right next to Glutos, this guy can, at the end of just any turn, you can heal 6 of his 7 health immediately, which does mean it feels like this guy is going to be an incredible frontline fighter because you're going to be able to heal him so quickly. Pretty good. Now, what is he like? He's meant to be a melee character. He moves 6 inches, which is pretty slow. But don't forget, obviously, if you do give this the euphoric keyword, then he's going to be able to run and charge. Also, he'll get crit 2 hits, which is pretty nice. Now, his combat profile looks pretty rubbish to start with 5 attacks, 2s and 3s, rend 2, damage 2. But here's where it gets really spicy. Ward rolls, thanks to Shard Slash, which is his weapon, cannot be made for damage points inflicted by this unit's combat attacks. So no wards. Good start. Okay, Rend 2 is also a good start as well. Then he's got Powered by Vainglory. If this unit charges this turn and the unmodified charge rolls a 6 or more, the attack's characteristic of this unit's shard slash is equal to the unmodified charge roll, which is pretty nice. Okay, so then that means if you roll a 12, or if there's a way to give him a 3d6, he could definitely have up to 12 attacks, which we love. So that's pretty good. Okay, so 12 attacks with doing damage too. And then he has the Glorious Reborn, where this unit has strike first if it charged in the same turn. So charge in, strike first, do a bunch of damage, right? And then then if Glutos is nearby, heal him. Feels pretty nice. I guess he's going to be points cheap. I don't know. I don't know if you think he's going to be points cheap or not points cheap. I mean, ultimately, having an incredibly tough to kill frontline fighter is useful. So we'll have to see how useful and if he makes it into lists. The next character or hero we're going to look at is the Shardspeaker of Slaanesh, which is, again, a Sybarite. We're going through all the mortals here. And is also a level 1 wizard with a 6-up ward save. It's got 5 health with a 5-up save, so it is genuinely not very survivable, but oddly has a pretty solid combat profile with 3 attacks doing damage D3, an additional 4 attacks doing damage D3 if it successfully casts a spell, thanks to its passive Mist Lurkers, where if this unit successfully casts a spell till the start of your next turn, you can use the Shadow Cloak clause. Why you would want to do that, I don't know, because he's only got 5 health with a 5-up save, so probably don't do that. But the reason you would bring the Shardspeaker, if it wasn't just for the fact it might be a cheap wizard, we don't know the points cost right now, 80 points, definitely take it, 180 points, don't take it, is because once per turn across the whole army, so you can only have one of these do it, in your shooting phase, you can use the Twisted Mirror ability, where you can declare an enemy unit within 8 inches and roll a dice. On a 4+, you subtract 1 from save rolls for that unit. Now, it's on a 4+, and it's very limited range, but it's an ability you can do if you run, so move 6 inches, run 6, 12 inches, range 8 inches. That's 20 inches effective range. And if you did have a big enemy unit with a high armor save, I don't know, something like Archeon or a unit of Immortis Guard, reducing their save down by 1, and then also having units attack it where they're going to have a lot of rend feels like a bonus in this army, but having a situational -1 rend when you're trying to create crit mortals with euphoric keyword and also using the the unlimited spell that you can do to make them turn into crit mortals kind of is an odd balancing act. So we'll have to see what the points value on this, but it is quite interesting. Next unit we're going to look at is the Lord of Pain. He's got 5 health, 4-up armor save, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he's got a 5-up ward save, which is pretty nice. Okay, so what does he do? He's a force multiplier for your army, thanks to the Disciples of Torment passive. The effect is, while this unit is contesting an objective, add 1 to the wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Sybarite units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So +1 to wound for Sybarite units wholly within 12. Okay. All right, that's not bad. It's going to affect shooting units as well. Pretty decent. He's also got a Share the Pain ability, where each time you make a successful ward roll for this unit for a damage point inflicted by a combat attack, you inflict 1 mortal damage back on the attacking unit after the fight ability has been resolved, which, in my opinion, is pretty weak sauce. He's not good in combat either. So he's really only been bought as a unit for +1 to wound aura for Sybarite units, which means he's going to give +1 to wound if Glutos is in range, +1 to wound to Sigvald, as long as those guys are wholly within 12 inches and also he's contesting objective. So there is a lot of stacking necessary things that you need to have happen to do the thing that you've brought him in your list for. So I hope he ends up cheap. And it's been pointed out to me in the chat by Nicholas, thank you very much, that he does not add +1 to wound to shooting attacks. He adds +1 to wound rolls for combat attacks. So it's not useful against, not useful for the shooting units. It's only going to be combat. So he's even worse. Next unit we're going to look at is the Lord of Hubris, and this has got an interesting mechanic for being able to slow down your enemy army. So he's got 5 health with a 5-up save and also a 5-up ward save, and he's got that Sybarite keyword. So if he is fighting near Glutos, Glutos is going to be able to heal him up 5, which is interesting. Now, if you decide to take this, then you can make an enemy unit strike last by using his You First I Insist in any combat phase, which is every combat phase. What you do is you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Your opponent must decide whether it's going to accept or decline the challenge. If they accept the challenge, the target has strike first, so the enemy unit, you give them strike first, but all their attacks can only target this unit. If they decline, they have strike last. So if you combo charge this guy in with another unit, you effectively are always going to make it so the other unit can't be hit. because they're either going to strike at this unit and therefore not strike the other unit, or they're going to strike last and the other unit's going to strike first. So, like, strike before them, basically. So that is genuinely a very interesting ability. He's kind of on the slow side, movement 6, so I think that's going to be your major problem for making this unit be able to charge in. And he's also got another ability which maybe will benefit loads of the mortals, specifically the Twinsouls and the Painbringers. In any combat phase, every combat phase, pick a friendly unit of Mymisdesh Painbringers or Twinsouls that's wholly within 12 inches of this guy. You roll dice and on a 3+, anytime one of those models is slain in combat, on a 4+, you inflict a mortal wound. Now, that is too many dice for me to roll. I'm not going to paint up 10, 20, or a unit of 10 Painbringers or Twinsouls just on the off chance that I can roll a 3 up and then a 4 up and I can do a mortal wound. I would prefer if my units smash their units and my units don't die. This works really well when you have, like, 60 of something like zombies or whatever, but also even in that situation, it's situational. It's a 3 up, 4 up. But I do like the you first I insist mechanic. I do like the ability for this guy to counter charge or combo charge with an enemy, with a friendly unit, and just smash through an enemy unit. I think that's really good. So next up, we're going to talk about a unique unit, which is Syll'Esske, which is a great model. It's two different it's a demon and a mortal mixture. Therefore, it's quite interesting in the keyword section because it's got the Cyberite keyword for that big heal, but it's also got the demon keyword. So that's why we're doing it now. It's kind of a mixture between the mortals and demons part of this army. It's a level 1 wizard and also has got a 6-up ward save. And it's unique, so you can only have one of them. So that 6-up ward save goes in a line with the 9 health, the 4-up armor save, 6-up ward save, and obviously Cyberite, Glutos can heal 6. Pretty good. I guess it's a support caster kind of combat unit, kind of a hybrid between all of these things. In combat, it's got 4 attacks that are damage 3, and the Scourging Whip has got 6 attacks damage 2. Not bad. Not great either, though, but not terrible. 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, Ren 2 damage 3. 12 damage is pretty significant and could do really well. It's also got the control value 4. Not bad for holding objective. So it's got a passive called the Vengeful Allegiance, which is each time you make an unmodified save roll of a 6 for a combat attack that targets this unit, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the attacking unit after the fight ability has been resolved. In order for that ability to be effective, your opponent's going to have to roll a lot of dice at you. But you don't have a good enough armor save or ward save that you're probably going to survive anything that's dishing out a ton of attacks. So, like, this is kind of like this is fine. Interesting. That's what I like to call them. This unique spell on this character is Subvert, which is cast on a 7. You pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches. That target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn. Turning off commands is actually a pretty big deal in the right situations, but you've got to cast it, your opponent's got to not dispel it, it's within 12 inches, and you need to be going against a unit that's going to use a command you want to shut down. So this is fine, I guess. And then lastly, they have in any combat phase, which is every combat phase, the ability to do Deadly Symbiosis, where you pick a friendly non-hero Cyberite unit, so basically any Cyberite unit that's not a hero, and any demon unit that's not a hero, that are both wholly within 12 inches of this model, and for the rest of the turn, if either target uses all-out attack or all-out defense, then both units get to use it. But that's a lot of stuff you've got to do to get +1 save or +1 to hit on 2 different units. Maybe it's going to be incredibly effective. Maybe you're going to have 2 units, like 1 unit of demons that's amazing, that you're going to really tool up, and 1 unit of mortals that's really good. You're going to tool up, and you want them both to have +1 to hit. That could be quite interesting. But like, you're going to really be building into a combo there, which I think is quite fun. But great model. Next here we're going to look at is Shalaxi Helbane. 16 health, 4-up save, and a 5-up ward save on this 2-cast hero hunting monster combat machine. So a level 2 caster, already pretty great. 16 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save makes it kind of the perfect melee character. 3-up armor save would have been nice, but probably would have been a bit over the top. In addition, this unit is fast, 14 inches. And if you make this unit have the euphoric keyword, it's going to have run and charge. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 20-inch move before you charge. That's very quick. In combat, it's got 6 attacks with Soul Piercer, which are damage 3, 2s and 3s, and it's got anti-hero +1 rend, and it's built, Shalaxi is built for fighting against heroes. So that's pretty good, with potentially 18 damage into a hero is nice. The Impaling Claws has also got 2 attacks, which are damage 4, 3s and 3s Rend 2. And again, if you are just making them euphoric and you're not even using the spell so that you do mortals, that's potentially a couple of exploding hits as well if you roll nicely, which could really spike up that damage if you want damage if you wanted to. If this character is battle damage, then Soul Piercer goes down to only having 4 attacks. Okay, as a passive, this character also has Supernatural Grace, where you subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks that target this unit, which is nice and is additionally great. I said it was a level 2 caster, which is good. Cast any of those endless spells, or in addition, cast the ability to do some of the good lore spells, or its own War Scroll spell, which is Refined Senses, and it's cast on a 4. For the rest of the turn, if you do cast it, you can add 1 to wound rolls for this unit's attacks that target enemy heroes. Love that. And add 1 to save rolls for attacks made by enemy heroes that target this unit. So it literally can power itself up as it's about to go in and fight big enemy models. And it does feel like it's a centerpiece edition, so it's going to be pretty effective. Lastly, and then also it's got a once per battle ability called Excess of Violence, and it feels like this is the reason you're going to take Shalaxi or the Keeper, because you pick a friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh unit, so probably a big unit of Slickblade Seekers or Daemonettes or something like that. It's wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. That target can use 2 fight abilities this turn. After the first is used, however, the target has Strike Last for the rest of the turn. Strike Twice is wild. We've seen some abilities where it's like +1 attacks characteristic in other battle tomes or other faction packs, whatever they're called. Fight Twice is just nutty. Especially if you've already put all of those buffs on it. You've given them Euphoric, you've given them Mortals. You're going to do some wild stuff here. Lastly, the Keeper, Shalaxi, they have a pretty amazing ability called Paramount Hunters. It's used as a reaction to when your opponent declares a charge ability with a hero that's within 9 inches of this unit. If that unit does declare a charge ability as a reaction, this unit is immediately going to move 2d6 inches. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units, but it must end its move within half an inch of that hero. If it does so, this unit has charge, and that hero's charge ability has no effect. So you can shut down enemy charges, which feels really nice. Enemy heroes. And if this is it does end up being the centerpiece edition, the hero centerpiece edition, Shalaxi feels like her stonks just go up and up. Obviously, she's got a lot of tools here. Good in combat, fast, a bit of a force multiplier because of the Fight Twice, and also a level 2 wizard. Feels like you're going to be definitely paying points for this, but I can't see how Shalaxi isn't going to make it to the tabletop. Okay, so the non-name version of Shalaxi is the Keeper of Secrets. And don't forget, we've already got that amazing artifact we looked at earlier where you can heal 3 at the end of each turn. So we love that on this character. The Keeper of Secrets has got 16 health, doesn't move as fast as Shalaxi, moves 12 inches, and has got a 4-up save, control value 5, good for holding objectives, and still got a 5-up ward save, and is still a 2-cast wizard. And because it's a non-unique character, you can take, traits and artifacts on this to buff it up, which I just mentioned before. So I think that's important to note. Now, importantly, the Keeper of Secrets did not have Fight Twice, and only Shalaxi has Fight Twice. And instead, the Keeper has got the Locus of Slaanesh, which you do in your hero phase, which means you pick a friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh demons unit that started out with 3 or more models that has been destroyed to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 4-up, a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit, rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of this unit and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. And I actually really love this, because I see a reason now to run Shalaxi and also run a Keeper of Secrets together. Because Shalaxi is going to make a unit Fight Twice, and this is going to bring back my demons from the dead. And it feels like that nice little Twin Towers situation there where they're both running through. And I feel like that's really good, that they're different in a very specific way. I really like that. I think that's nice. Okay. So if we keep going and look at the combat profile, 6 attacks for the elegant Great Blade, 2s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 2. And that damage 2 is quite important, but there is a way to make that damage 3, because of the once per turn ability, which you do in any combat phase, called Dark Temptations, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. You pick one of the following effects: +1 to hit rolls for the target's attacks, +1 to save rolls for the target. So this is the enemy unit. You're either giving them +1 to hit, or you're giving them +1 to save, or if the target is damaged, you heal D3. There is maybe an FAQ needed for the specifications of choosing a unit that's damaged before you decide what the effect is, but that's crunchy and we don't need to get there. But either way, if you do one of those things, then you add one to the damage characteristic of this unit's Great Blade for the attacks that target that enemy unit for the rest of the turn. So really, it's 6 attacks, damage 3. Of course, if you make it euphoric, you've got crit 2 hits. Impaling Claws, still damage 4, which is pretty nice as well. The Keeper of Secrets, like Shalaxi, is also -1 to hit for any combat attacks that attack it, thanks to Supernatural Grace. And it's got its own damage spell called Cacophonic Choir, which is cast on a 6, where you pick up to 3 visible enemy units within 6 inches of this unit and roll a dice for each target. And if your roll exceeds the control characteristic of that model, of that unit, then they take D3 mortal damage. So 3D3 mortal damage across enemy army is pretty nice, but it's pretty short range in my opinion. Worth noting, because I kind of moved over it, that in your hero phase, when you do use the Glutos of Slaanesh, the ability to bring back a dead demon unit, you can use that ability more than once across the army if you had 2 Keepers of Secrets. Normally, that's locked to once per army, but it doesn't seem to be locked in this case. Therefore, if you did want to take 2 Keepers of Secrets, as of time of recording, you're going to be able to, as long as you have 2 dead demon units, you're going to be able to bring both back. They are on 4+, which is pretty rubbish, but ultimately that's a pretty interesting difference to what you've seen on something like the Great Unclean one. Ultimately, as a 2-cast wizard that's fairly fighting, can bring units back from the dead, I think this is going to be a fairly expensive unit, but was also going to be a pretty good unit. Now, whether or not you're going to take it in combination with Shalaxi and a Keeper, or just Shalaxi on its own, or just Keeper on its own, it really depends on what you would like to do. So I think this is pretty fun. Next unit we're going to look at is the Masque, which is a demon character with the unique ability to assassinate characters and maybe even assassinate faction terrain. It's got 5 health, 5 up save, and it moves 8 inches. It's got a 4-up ward save. 4-up ward save as well, so very, very survivable. But why, Rob, is this good at fighting, assassinating things? Because of its ability Endless Dance, which you do in the deployment phase. Remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than, and just to be clear, 3 inches from all enemy units. That's it. That's the only stipulation that you need to do. So if you do know that you're going to get the first turn, you could potentially put this near the enemy's faction terrain, as long as you're obviously outside 3 inches, and then go stab it on the first turn, which is very funny. And to help with this, in any hero phase, which means every hero phase, you can pick one of the following effects. Either add 3 to the attacks characteristic of its weapon profile, or heal 3 to the unit. If you do add 3, that means you'd end up with 9 attacks that hit on 3s. They do wound on 4s and they're rend 1, but they're damaged too. 9 attacks with that profile is probably enough to, gank a little 4 wound to 6 wound hero, as long as it doesn't have too good an armor save, or even just punch a piece of terrain to death, which is pretty funny, to be honest. So actually, the Masque might have some additional utility in Age of Sigmar 4 because of faction terrain. So Synessa is part of a duo pair of models. You don't have to take both, but there's a definite advantage to taking both, the twins. So Synessa is the kind of magic support one. Synessa is a 10 health monster character with 5 up save and a 5 up ward save, which is kind of ropey on the survivability. Moves 12 inches with a control value of 5, which is pretty nice, especially when we get to what it can do with control values. Also, it's got the ability to project power quite nicely with its Staff of Slaanesh at 18 inches, which is 3 shots that do D3 damage. And in combat, it's not going to fight big monsters with 5 attacks at damage 2, but can maybe fight some little infantry units if they even exist in this game. So it's got a passive called Progeny of Slaanesh. Because it's a level 1 caster, while a friendly Dexcessa, which is another unique character, is on the battlefield, you can add 1 to this unit's power level. So that's pretty good. So this becomes a 2-cast wizard, which is pretty nice. So you can do a load of extra spells. We'll have to see. Talking of it being a wizard, it's got its own spell, which is cast on a 7, where you pick a visible enemy hero within 18 inches to be the target. And you add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for combat attacks and melee attacks that target that enemy unit for the rest of the turn. So if you were looking to, Dexcessa and let's say Shalaxi, you could have a unit that's got +1 to hit and +1 to wound, with Shalaxi making that unit fight twice into an enemy hero. That feels like that's going to do a prodigious amount of damage. It's pretty nice. Now, talking about control score, at the end of any turn, before you do scores, so the way it works is the active player does any of their end of turn abilities, and then the non-active player does any of their end of any turn abilities, and then you work out who controls objectives. At the end of any turn, you are able to use a Voice of Slaanesh, where you pick a visible unit within 18 inches to be the target. If the target is friendly, you add 5 to their control score, which is the same as having a big monster. Or if it's an enemy unit, you reduce it by 5. So friendly unit, add 5. Enemy unit, reduce it by 5. You can only do one or either of. You can only do one of those two effects. This does mean that you could, bomb around and just grab these objectives with these characters, which does sound quite interesting and spicy. But is this unit going to bring enough to the army as well to make it so your opponent just doesn't ruffle stomp your army and just kill this model? We'll have to see. So if you take Synessa, then you can also take Dexcessa. I mean, you could take them independently, but it seems like you should take them together. Dexcessa's got the same profile, but apart from being a wizard, with 10 health, a 5-up save, and a 5-up ward save, moves 12 inches, has got a control value of 5. The bonus you have for having both on the board for Dexcessa is that you get to have -1 to hit rolls for attacks that target this unit. So it's not quite as big a buff as you get the other way around. It's definitely a combat piece with 7 attacks at 3s and 3s, rend 2, damage 2. And it has this incredibly fun ability called Joyous Battle Fury, which you do at the end of any turn. If any models were slain by this unit's combat attacks this turn, then you heal D3. This unit then place a Battle Fury token next to it. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's Impaling Talons for each Battle Fury token. And there's no caps on that. So if you get +6, you're going to have +6 attacks. There's 13 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 2, damage 2. Don't forget, if you also make this euphoric, you've got all those exploding 6s. It's also got a passive called Fleeting Dance of Death, where this unit can use charge abilities even after it's retreated in the same turn. In addition, no mortal damage is inflicted on this unit by retreat abilities. So that's quite nice. Run and charge if it's euphoric. Retreat and charge is built in. That's a very fast unit. But it's also a force multiplier as well, where it's got this rampage where you do it once per turn in any combat phase for the army, where you can use Redolence of Violence. If this unit charges this turn, pick up to D3 other friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh demon units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So that's just going to be some of the non-hero demons. You add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Obviously, this will combo incredibly well with a Keeper of Secrets. So we take a unit of demons, we make them have +1 to their attacks characteristic, we make them euphoric, maybe make them do mortals, and then we make them pile in and attack twice. That's a massive combo of this just absolute ruination of damage. And if that unit then dies and we brought another Keeper, although there seems to be 1,000,000 points now, then we're going to be able to bring that unit back from the dead, which is pretty spicy. So I quite like this. I like the twins. I think they're going to have to come in quite cheap because their survivability is a question mark for me with 10 health and a 5-up save. I'm going to need them to be really cheap. But I think it's incredibly fun, and I really like the rules writing here. It's very, very fun. I'm hoping it's cheap so we can see them on the board, because I think they have a lot of play, but it needs to be cheap enough to do. So the next unit is the Contorted Epitome, That's got 7 health, a 5-up save, and a 4-up ward save, so very effective. And it's kind of a melee caster. It has a 1 cast, so it's a level 1 wizard, unless it makes a successful ward save thanks to its Swallow Energy passive. If you make a successful ward roll for this unit, you add 1 to this unit's power level until the end of your next turn. So until the end of your next turn. That's pretty decent in my personal opinion. Making it a level 2 caster. But what's it going to cast? Hopefully it's cheap so that you're going to cast 2 spells. That's what I'm trying to say. It's got 7 attacks in combat, hits on a 3, wounds on a 4, rend 1, damage 2, which is okay. The wound on a 4 is pretty rough. And it has a reaction ability if your opponent declares a command or a retreat ability for opponent in combat with this unit. You inflict D3 mortal damage on that enemy unit, which isn't that whelming, to be honest. I'm not overwhelmed, I'm not underwhelmed. I'm probably verging on underwhelmed. So a level 1 wizard that can be a level 2 in a specific situation that's kind of okay in combat. The Contorted Epitome doesn't seem to have a use unless it tends to be fairly cheap, so that you can use the unlimited spell and bring some manifestations to the table. Now we're going to look at the Infernal Enrapturess, the Herald of Slaanesh, which is 5 health, 5 up save, 6 up ward save, so not super survivable. It's not a wizard. It's not really a combat unit. It's not really a shooting unit, although it does have 2 shots that hit on a 2, win on a 3, Ren 2, damage D3, which is pretty nice, but it's got 2 attacks, and it's 12-inch range, so you've got to be pretty close, and being that unsurvivable feels pretty rough. So, what does it do? Well, it has this once per turn army reaction, where if your opponent declared a spell ability for a wizard within 18 inches of this unit, then they need to re-roll their casting roll for that spell. If 2 or more dice in the re-rolled casting roll have the same value, or if one of those dice is a 6, that wizard takes D3 mortal damage after the effect of that spell has been resolved. So the spell still happens if they successfully cast it, and you are making them re-roll it, which I guess is a positive. But what if my enemy doesn't really have any wizards, and I can only make them re-roll 1, and it's only D3 mortal damage? Which I feel like is pretty weak source, to be honest. But hopefully it's really cheap. Like, if it's at 80 points, I might bring it. But probably, like, in the wide world right now, I don't think I would take it. It's only reacting once. You can't even take multiple of these. So, yeah, I'm probably going to say not for me. Next hero we're going to look at is the Bladebringer on Exalted Chariot. It's a level 1 wizard with a massive wound pool, 6 up ward save, 4 up armor save with 12 health. So if there's a reason to take it, it's because it's a pretty survivable wizard. Moves 12 inches, got a control value of 2 on a pretty big base. It's got 12 attacks with the Flensing Whips and Piercing Claws, which are 3s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1, which isn't going to do tons. But, you know, obviously, if you give this feels like a real good target for being able to spike mortals on. And then Steeds of Poison Tongues, which is 8 attacks, 3s and 4s, no rend, damage 1. Okay. It's got an ability in any charge phase, which means every charge phase, where if this unit charges this turn, you pick a unit with an inch, roll a d3 on a 2 up, do d3 mortal damage, which is kind of a nothing burger, really. And then you got the Soul Gorger's ability, which is once per turn for your whole army, so you can only use it once, even if you've got multiple of these, which you do in your movement phase. And you pick up to 3 friendly, non-unique Hedonites of Slaanesh war machines. So that'd just be other chariots, basically. Wholly within 12 inches of this unit. And you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. This ability also affects companion weapons. So that's quite nice. But +1 attack characteristic on top of 12 attacks or 8 attacks isn't really doing much to add to the validity of the unit. So I hope these guys are cheap, but I'm not really sure I'm in love with them at the moment. So the first unit we're going to look at is a unit of Daemonettes, because it feels like demons have got like a lot of interaction here. So a unit of Daemonettes is 10 models, and they do 2 attacks each. Champion's going to be 21 attacks. And they have a special ability, passive, Lithe and Swift, where you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's Piercing Claws for the rest of the turn, if this unit charged in the same turn. So that's going to be 3 attacks each. We already know there's another way at least to get +1 attack on this unit, so that would be 4 attacks each. If we had exploding 6s, making them euphoric, then that unit of 10 is going to have 40 attacks exploding 6s, or 40 attacks exploding, doing mortals on 6s to hit. If we made it a unit of 20, that's going to be 80 attacks, doing mortals on 6s, and then, if you would like, was 81 attacks, I apologize, and then doing crit mortals, and then a Keeper of Secrets can make this unit fight again. So that would mean 162 attacks doing crit mortals. I do not know what that is, right? But it's pretty impressive. And then if you have another Keeper of Secrets and this unit does die, you're going to be able to bring 10 back. Feels nice. So yeah, sorry, if you have a Shalaxi. If you have Shalaxi, you can make this fight twice. Shalaxi fight twice, Keeper of Secrets to bring half the unit size back. And I don't imagine 10 of these is going to be very expensive. Now, the downside to this incredible amount of output, and I was talking about glass cannons earlier, is that they are a glass cannon. They've got 1 health, 6 up save, so this unit of 10 is only going to have a 10 health wound pool, and they do have a 6 up ward save. So you are going to absolutely crush. So this unit can survive to fight twice, because if you throw a Lord of Pain in, then the Lord of Hubris, if you throw a Lord of Hubris in, you can make the enemy unit have to fight the Lord of Hubris. So that's the purpose of the Lord of Hubris, which is pretty interesting. So I quite like that. And they could also potentially, yes, survive with the Daemonettes, with the pile-in spell as well. That's a great shout. So you could attack, then you could use the reaction to move out, and then you could pile in again and fight again, thanks to the Keeper of Secrets. Pretty nice. Oh yeah, Dexcessa can add tax as well. So we love this. This is definitely a combo that you could run, but they will die to anybody. Next unit we'll look at is a unit of Fiends. Fiends are a unit of 3, and each model's got 4 health each with a 5-up save, and they're very fast. They move 10 inches. Now, these are kind of anti-monster units. They've got 4 attacks per model, so 12 out of a unit of 3. They hit on a 4, which is sad. Wounds on a 3. Rend 1, unless you're fighting monsters, in which case it's Rend 2, and then it does D3 damage. So obviously, if you make these guys euphoric, I don't think you can make these guys euphoric, actually. Or maybe you can, yeah. You can make them have crit 2 hits. Which is good. Now, the reason that you would take these guys is because of the Sporific Must, where once per turn in the army, so only available to one of the units of Fiends that you take, in the combat phase, any combat phase, you can pick an enemy unit in the combat to be the target, roll a 4+, and they strike last. So now we have the combo of being able to make our Daemonettes hit, we strike last with these guys, and then our Daemonettes are going to fight again, even though they fight last, thanks to Shalaxi being able to make them fight last. If that wasn't enough for you, they have the Disruptive Song, where you subtract 1 from the casting rolls and unbinding rolls for enemy wizards while they're within 12 inches. And -1 to unbind feels pretty strong, because we've seen very few pluses to unbind at the moment, and we've also seen only very few limited pluses to cast. So -1 to cast and also -1 to unbind is pretty good. Now, the weakness of this unit is that they're beasts, which means this unit has a maximum control score of 1. Even if you have 6 of these, they're only going to count as 1 for holding an objective. So these guys are really good at fighting monsters and also making units strike last. So it feels like they're a support unit and not like a mainline unit that's going to do all the damage. So yeah, I find the Fiends to be super interesting. I'm not sure I'm going to would ever use them, but I do like I think the strike last may be the reason you would want to take them. So keep it on with the demons. We've got a Hellflayer, which is a Chariot. It's got 7 health, 4-up save, moves 10 inches, and has got a 6-up base ward save. It's also a War Machine. So like we talked about earlier, you're going to be able to give it +1 attack if you take the War Machine version of this. In combat, it's got a bunch of attacks with the whips and the poison tongues, which I'm not too stressed about, because I don't think they're going to do a lot of damage. But the interesting one is the Axle Blades, which is 4 attacks, hitting on 4, wounding on 2, Rend 2, damage D3. If you hit an infantry, it's going to be Rend 3, which is absolutely wild. In addition to this, it's got a passive ability called Threshing Doom. When this unit moves, it can pass through the models in an enemy infantry units and can pass through the combat ranges of enemy infantry units, but it cannot end a move in combat unless specified otherwise. So if you do make this unit euphoric, you can make it run and charge. So that means it can move up to 16 inches passing across enemy infantry units. Why is this good? Well, it's got an ability called Soul Scent, which you do in any movement phase. Pick 3 enemy units that each unit passed across, and you roll D3 for each target. On a 2+, you inflict a number of mortal damage equal to the roll. And if you do kill any models with it, then you get a 5-up ward save for this unit for the rest of the turn. So that's 7 health with a 4-up save and a 5-up ward save. It's quite a move blocker, in my opinion, which is quite nice. It depends how cheap this unit is, but it is going to do some interesting damage, especially in an anti-infantry matchup. Looking at its smaller chariot cousin, the Seeker Chariot, it's got 6 health, so 1 less health, 4-up save, 6-up ward, so about the same survivability. And it's got a terrible combat profile that's going to do nothing. But in the charge phase, this thing can charge a unit in any charge phase, and on 2-up, do D3 mortal damage. Will that be worth the cost of the unit? We'll have to find out on its points. But I'm going to say, based on the ability to not do any force multiplication, I'm probably unlikely to take this. Next unit we're going to talk about are Seekers. They're a cavalry unit, and they are 5 models in that unit. They've got 3 health each, which is pretty nice, for 15 health, but they only have a 5-up save and a 6-up ward save. In combat, not bad. 3 attacks, 3s and 4s, Rend 1. Against cavalry, though, that goes up to Rend 2, but it's only damage 1. Then they've got the Steed's Poison Tongue, which is 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, no Rend, damage 1. It's companion. And if this unit does make any run rolls, thanks to the Quicksilver Speed, it will always be at least a minimum of 4, because if you roll a 1 to 3, it becomes a 4. So they're fast, If they're cheap, they might be quite good. But if you are going to take some units in what seems to be a fairly hero front-loaded unit, then you would probably want something that's more effective than these guys, but they're not bad. If you like another type of cavalry unit, you can have Hellstriders. And these, in my opinion, are just a much better version of the last unit we talked about. It's a unit of 5, and they have 3 health with a 5-up save, so 15 health across the unit. And they move 12 inches, which is very, very fast. Okay? Now, the reason I think these are better, because they have the same number of attacks, 3 attacks, but they're 3s and 4s, no rend, unless they hit an infantry, in which case it could be rend 1. But they have +1 damage on the charge, so they go up to damage 2, which I think is really good. And the people in the chat are pointing out that, yes, these don't have a 6-up ward save, which I think is nominal anyway, and also you can't bring them back from the dead using the ability that you find on a Keeper of Secrets. So that's the difference you have. You have a unit that you can return from the dead, or a unit that will do some damage at least, right? So I personally think this is pretty good, because if you were to have a big unit of these, then, you know, with a champion included, then you're going to have something like 31 attacks that are damage 2. Which feels pretty nice. And they've also got a passive. If this unit charges this turn, you subtract 3 from the control scores of enemy infantry units while they're in combat with this unit. So if you combo that up with some of the other debuffs, you can really reduce the ability to score for some units on objectives. It's going to be really fun to look at. Let's stick on the cavalry train, and let's start talking about some of the mortals that you can take. And the Slickblade Seekers is a unit of 3. +2, making them a unit of 5. They are a unit of 5, and they've got 4 health each. So they have got a tanky 20 health across a unit of 5. They've got 5-up save. They move 12 inches. They've got a control value of 1. They have got a similar profile to the unit we looked at before, with 3 attacks, 3s and 4s on the rider, that's got rend 1, damage 1 unless it charged, and with movement 12 and run and charge, if you end up making this unit have exploding 6s, it gets pretty nutty, you know, if you make them euphoric. They also have unrivaled velocity as a passive, so you can reroll charge rolls for this unit. They're also a Sybarite, so you could use Glutos, I guess, to heal them. But the real combo here probably is the fact that in the retreat and charge subfaction, you have an incredibly fast unit that you can make euphoric. Therefore, and then if you cast a spell on them, so that these guys do mortals on 6s to hit, then a unit of 10 of these bad boys is, and you can also get plus attacks. I think you can also get plus attacks, and that might be on demons. But either way, if we don't even add any plus attacks to this unit, it's going to be 31 attacks with 6s doing mortals, and those mortals are going to be 2 mortals every time, in my personal opinion. That's like not my personal opinion. That's just very good. That's very, very good. So I'm getting tired now, and I can hear myself rambling. So I apologize about that if you are listening. In addition, the steed has got a bunch of attacks as well, with another. If you do have a unit of 10, another 30 attacks coming from the steeds that are 3s and 4s, no rend, but a damage 1. That feels like a ton of attacks. We're talking about 60 attacks coming out of this unit. Then Shalaxi could make this unit fight twice. This feels pretty pro in my opinion, and it's also a very fast unit, so it's pretty nice. We are going to look at the Blissbarb Seekers. This is another unit of 5 cavalry, but this is an archer variant instead. Each body has got 4 health with a 5-up save, and they move 12 inches. So they're quite quick. Their Seeker Bow is pretty short range, 12-inch range, so it does mean they're going to be close to the enemy who can charge them back, especially in a world of counter-charge. Don't necessarily want to be within 12 inches of the enemy. Anyway, you've got 3 attacks from the bow, which are 3s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1. The 4s to wound feels pretty tough, but don't forget you can get a spell that makes you able to get +1 to wound against an enemy unit, which is pretty nice. And then they can still run in and do some combat with their steed's tongue attack, which is 3 attacks, 3s and 4s, no rend, damage 1. They also have a passive called Glory Shots, where you add 1 to the rend characteristic of this unit's range weapons for attacks that target the units contesting an objective you do not control. So that's not too bad. So it'd be rend 2, and you could potentially have a lot of shots. You don't forget, you can also make these guys euphoric for exploding 6s. I think right now I need to be convinced about these. I need them to be a little bit cheaper than they currently are in the game. And then we'll have to see how the rest of the list works together. But, you know, they're okay, they're fast, and they do some shooting. Keeping in the theme of talking about shooting units, we're going to talk about Blissbarb Archers. Blissbarb Archers is a unit of 10, and they have a token that they bring with them, which is a Blissbrew Homunculus. The Blissbrew Homunculus is a token, and there is one homunculus for every 10 models in this unit. You subtract one from hit rolls for shooting attacks that target this unit while it has a homunculus. But the first time you make a save roll of a 1, you remove the homunculus from the unit. Stormcast Eternals also have this same token thing, and it means the first time you take any damage, basically, you're going to lose your homunculus, which feels rubbish. But whatever. Let's talk about what they actually do. They've got 2 shots each at 18 inches. So a unit of 10 is going to shoot 20 shots. A unit of 20 is going to shoot 40 shots. They hit on a 3, which you can all-out attack, and they wound on a 4, but you can cast a spell so that they're going to be wounding on 3s. They're rend 1, and there are ways to improve that, and they're damage 1. And don't forget, you have the ability to use the shooting attack also in your opponent's turn with the command ability, which is pretty nice. In 18 inches is a big range, although you have to shoot the closest unit. So 40 shots each turn, if you use that command point every turn, feels like a lot of shots that you're going to be putting out continuously. Their weakness is that they only have a 6-up save, but their strength is that Battle Shock is no longer a thing, so you are going to have to do all 20 damage to the Blissbarb Arch unit. They do not have any like shoot into combat ability, but they move 6 inches, and you can also make them euphoric for exploding 6s, which is pretty nice if you do have those 40 shots, and also give them run and shoot, so they could be quite quick up the board. So I think that's pretty good. I think that's a lot of shooting, in my opinion. So, like, a lot of shooting at a pretty decent range. Maybe they're not what they were, but shooting your opponent's turn every turn is going to be a lot of shots. Next unit we're going to look at are Slaangor Fiendbloods. They're a unit of 3. They've got 3 health each with a 5-up armor save, so they're not that survivable with 9 health across the unit on that 5-up save. They move 6 inches, and they're only a control value of 1, so unit 3 is only going to count for a control score of 3. It's a combat unit, and it's got 4 attacks that hit on 4s, which is unfortunate. Wounds on 3s is only rend 1 and is damage 2. But it does have this special ability, which is in the enemy shooting phase. If any damage points are allocated to this unit this turn, this unit can make a normal move as if it were your movement phase, moving up to 6 inches and maybe making it possible to do a counter charge. Whether or not the counter charge is going to be overly effective, I'm not really sure. Maybe if you have a large unit, it's going to be 24 attacks that do damage 2. That feels like a lot. Pile in attack twice from Shalaxi, that could be a lot. Give them euphoric, make them have exploding 6s. But it feels like maybe there's a better choice than this unit, in my opinion. It's nice to have that innate damage too. If they had a better armor save, they could be like a bruiser unit. But I feel like Slickblade Seekers that are faster and will have more output are probably going to be better than the Slaangor Fiendbloods. Next unit are Symbaresh Twinsouls. They're an infantry unit, so they're a little bit slower at movement 6, but they are a unit of 5 models, with each model having 2 health and a 4-up armor save with a control value of 1. These guys, in my opinion, are really great because of a couple of reasons. Let's talk about their passives first. They've got ego-driven excess, where if this unit did not charge this turn, you subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by enemy units while they're in combat with this unit. So they feel like they're great for holding an objective. In addition, they have another passive called Fiendish Reflexes. If this unit did not charge this turn, it has a 5-up ward save. So as long as you just dump these guys on an objective, your opponent is going to be constantly having to be -1 attack characteristic and fighting a unit that's got a 5-up ward save. Where in my opinion this unit gets even stonkier is the fact that their merciless weapons attack profile is 4 attacks per model, 3s, wounds on a 4, which is obviously a bit sad, rend 1, damage 1. But the reason that it's not that bad that it wounds on a 4 is because you're going to make these euphoric killers, and these are a great target for converting this with a spell. So the euphoric killers crit 2 becomes mortals, because a unit of 5 of these is going to do 20 attacks. A unit of 10 of these holding an objective is going to do 40 attacks doing crit mortals, which in my opinion is pretty good. With Shalaxi, they're going to pile in attack twice, so that's 80 attacks crit mortals. You're also going to have a unit that's going to have 20 health with a 4-up save and a 5-up ward save. In my opinion, that's an incredible unit for holding an objective, and these guys are great. In a weird twist of fate, our last unit, the Mymisdesh Painbringers, is a unit of 5 infantry, and these don't have 2 weapons. Instead, these have shields, but they kind of work like they got 2 weapons anyway. The unit of 5, 2 health each with a 3-up armor save. They move 6 inches and they control value of 1. They have a passive ability, which is Paragons of Battle, where you add 1 to the rend characteristics of this unit's melee weapons while it's contesting an objective you do not control. Perfect. So +1 rend to this unit if you're trying to take an enemy unit. They've got 3 attacks each, so it's going to be 30. It's going to be 16 across the unit. 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. So if you're attacking the enemy unit, it's going to be rend 2. It feels pretty nice, in my personal opinion. Get these guys with crit 2 hits, get a bunch of extra attacks and pump them out. That's pretty fun as well. These aren't as good as the other guys because they're not as survivable. They have a better armor save, but they don't bring an innate ward save, which is interesting. So that is the Hedonites of Slaanesh review. That's all the war scrolls we've gone through. But there are going to be loads more videos to come. We're going to write some army lists. We're going to do some tier videos. Chariot's looking at you. You're going to be pretty low. I am quite interested in the Slaanesh book. It feels like there's some more than some of the other books so far. It looks like there's some big hits and there are some misses. Let me know in the comments below which one you think are big hits and which ones you think are misses. I would be interested to know what you think. But I definitely think that Shalaxi, Glutos, I feel like they're very good. Keeper of Secrets in there as well, bringing up that demon side. I do like what they've done with the twins. I think that's quite interesting. So Dexcessa and Excessa, I think that's quite fun. The army feels like it could be very fast. It's got a lot of cavalry units that can go very fast. Run and charge is interesting. I don't think I necessarily saw anything that defeated the fact that you're giving your opponent potentially 12-inch charges. So I think that's going to be maybe really telling. But maybe you're just going to use those big characters, those big like melee characters like Shalaxi and Keeper of Secrets. But I don't know if they're going to be able to bring enough damage. We'll have to see. Ultimately, piling an attack twice is a big deal, in my opinion. I think Glutos is really interesting as well. I think Glutos, like with some of those infantry like mortals around them, could be very spicy. So I really like that. I think Glutos is a good build. Can't wait to get to the list building stage. Can't wait to look at the points. I think that's pretty fun. But ultimately, thank you to the Twitch chat for hanging out with me for this 3.5-hour slog. I hope you've enjoyed this video and all of my faction previews. If you'd like to help me out, like, comment, subscribe, join Patreon, or share this with your friends. Either way, thank you very much for listening to my video, and I hope to see you again soon.